Hello, my name is Poppy and I'm in Year 12. Today I'm going to be reading Rhinos Don't Eat Pancakes. Do you ever get the feeling that your mum and dad aren't listening to you? You do? Well then you are just like Daisy. Her mum and dad never listen. Daisy could tell them that her hair was on fire or that the dog had eaten the postman, and they would just nod and say, "That's nice, dear," or "Tell your gran," or "Can't you see I'm on the phone?" So when one day Daisy had something really important to say, guess what? Nobody listened. So this is what happened. Daisy was eating her breakfast when a big purple rhino strolled into the kitchen. That's right, a big purple rhino. It was as big as a bus and as purple as a plum. It was also a bit peckish. So it took a tromp of Daisy's pancake and went upstairs. "Mum, Mum," Daisy called, "there's a big..." "Tell your dad," said Mum. "He'll catch it in a mug and throw it out of the window." "Dad, Dad," said Daisy, there's a huge..." "Shh," said Dad. "The spider can wait." "It's not a spider," Daisy shouted. "It's a big purple rhinoceros." But, as usual, nobody listened. Meanwhile, the rhino made himself right at home. Daisy saw him in the hall and glimpsed him in the garden. She spied him in the bathroom and surprised him on the loo. But every time she tried to tell her parents, they'd say, "Shh, Daisy, can't you see we're busy?" Daisy's parents were busy all week. So Daisy began to talk to the rhino instead. Soon they became good friends. They played hoopla and made pizza together, and the rhino tickled Daisy until she thought she'd burst. But Daisy's parents didn't notice. Until the pancakes ran out. "Who ate all the pancakes?" yelled Dad, looking straight at Daisy. "It was the rhino," she said. "Rhinos don't eat pancakes," said Dad. This one does," cried Daisy. "I saw him in the kitchen." "A rhino," said Mum. "In the kitchen," said Dad. "Yes," said Daisy, "exactly." Mum and Dad roared with laughter. "Whatever next?" they hooted. "A shark in the toilet? A polar bear in the fridge? There he is, look!" Daisy yelled. But Mum and Dad were so busy laughing, they didn't even notice. "Come on, Rhino," said Daisy. "I've had enough of this." The rhino tickled Daisy with his horn, but she was far too glum to giggle. "Mum and Dad never listen," she sighed. "They are always a million miles away." The rhino sighed deeply through his big purple nostrils. "I'm sorry, Rhino," said Daisy. "Your family are a million miles away too, aren't they?" The rhino nodded, and a lilac tear rolled down his cheek. Poor Rhino. That night, Daisy was up, thinking of ways to get the rhino back home to his family. He was too heavy for a hot air balloon, and too big for Daisy's rubber dinghy. She thought about lending him her bike, but the helmet would never fit. The next morning, Mum and Dad had a surprise. "We're taking you to the zoo," said Mum, "so you can see a real rhino." "What do you think of that?" grinned Dad. Daisy thought it was a stupid idea when there was a perfectly good rhino sitting on the sofa. But she didn't say so. What was the point? Nobody would listen. At the zoo, Daisy saw yellow giraffes, bright red parrots, orange and black tigers, and grass-green snakes, but she couldn't help thinking about her poor purple rhino. "Hurry up, Daisy," said Mum. "The rhino's on his way." But what was this? "Cripes," gasped Mum. "Well, that explains the pancakes," gasped Dad. Mum, Dad and Daisy rushed back home, and guess what they saw when they got there? That's right, the biggest, purplest rhinoceros in town. "What did I tell you?" Daisy said, grinning from ear to ear. "I'm phoning the zoo," said Mum. The rhino looked startled. "No," said Daisy, "not the zoo. He needs to get back to his family. They are a million miles away." "Well, we better get a move on," said Dad. "The next flight to a million miles away leaves this afternoon." The rhino packed his suitcase while Daisy found his hat. Then they all pushed his big purple bottom into the back of the car and drove to the airport. "I'll miss you," said Daisy as the rhino boarded the plane. The rhino gave her a big purple hug. He would miss her too. Back at home, Daisy began to feel lonely again. Who would listen to her now? But little did she realise everything was about to change. "Tell us about the rhino, Daisy," said Mum. "Yes," said Dad. "Tell us about that big purple pancake-eating rhino." So Daisy told them about the hoopla and the pizza and the tickles, and guess what? They listened and listened until she had completely run out of words. It was brilliant. "Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?" asked Mum as she tucked Daisy into bed that night. Daisy looked out onto the landing. "No, that's all for now," said Daisy, smiling. "Night, night." The pink polar bear would have to wait till tomorrow morning. It's a good book.
Hello, I'm Eve in Year 7, and today I'm reading How Do Dinosaurs Eat Their Food? How does a dinosaur eat all his food? Does he burp, does he belch, or does he make noises quite rude? Does he pick at his cereal, throw down his cup, hoping to make someone else pick it up? Does he fuss, does he fidget, or does he squirm in his chair? Does he flip his spaghetti high in the air? Does a dinosaur glare? How does a dinosaur eat all his food? Does he spit out his broccoli, partially chewed? Does he bubble his milk? Stick beans up his nose? Does he squeeze juicy oranges with his big toes? No, he says, please. And thank you, he sits very still. He eats all before him with smiles and goodwill. He tries every new thing, at least one small bite. He makes no loud noises that isn't polite. He never drops anything onto the floor, and after he finishes, he asks for more. Eat up, little dinosaur. The end.
It's a good book.
Hello, I'm Ollie in Year 8 and I'm going to be reading Good Night, Sleep Tight. A new sound echoed along the corridors of the castle. To the king and queen was born a royal princess. The prince had a baby sister. He couldn't see what all the fuss was about. Among the many splendid presents was the softest, fluffiest pillow in the kingdom. But one day, the fat royal cat squished it flat. The poor princess cried and cried and cried. So the king popped over for a little chat with his loyal knight. "Fill this with something soft and fluffy," he barked, "and hurry." The knight leapt into action. He was so quick there wasn't even enough time to finish the sentence. Deep inside the wild wood, the prickly bears rubbed their grumbly tummies. Lunchtime, they slurped. But the knight was thinking about his quest. "I wonder if I could borrow some bear hair to put in the royal pillow," he thought, and he decided to take a closer look. 2 minutes later, the grizzled bears shuffled back into the shadows, rubbing their sore bottoms and mumbling to themselves. "Well, really, it's hardly fair. We just wanted a quick nibble. No need for that." Bear hair lay everywhere. The knight filled the pillow and gave it to the horse. "Is this pillow soft enough for the princess?" he asked. "Nay," said the horse. He thought it was too scratchy. Nobody noticed slinky shadows curling around in the tree trunks. A jumble of wolves howled from the trees. They sniffed the knight, they sniffed the horse, then sniffed off. Wolf hair lay everywhere. The knight filled the pillow again and gave it to the horse. "Is this pillow soft enough for the princess?" he asked. "Nay," said the horse. He thought it was too bristly this time. Just then, an owl dropped out of the sky and bounced off the king's head. Feathers fluttered gently to the floor. "That's it," cried the knight. "I'll make a pillow of feathers."
Hello, I'm Ava in Year 8, and I'm going to be reading part 2 of Good Night, Sleep Tight. "If it's feathers you want," said the dizzy owl, "follow me, I'll take you to see the feathers tree." So the knight and his "I'm completely scared of heights" horse climbed up into the branches. All the birds gathered around to listen to the knight's tale. There were feathers everywhere. When he had finished, the birds happily agreed to help and pluck just enough feathers to fill the pillow of the royal brim. The knight and his faithful horse waved goodbye and galloped and galloped and galloped until they came back to the wild wood. They wrestled and wriggled their way through its darkest secrets and plopped out the other side. No one in the castle had slept for a week, so they were jolly pleased to see the knight return. "Place that child upon that pillow before I go bananas," wailed the king. Everyone held their breath. The princess didn't. So the prince leaned over and gave his baby sister a cuddle. The princess stopped crying. She smiled, blew a little bubble, and then went to sleep. The king hugged the prince and the queen hugged the prince. At last the castle fell silent, except for the snoring that snuffled sleepily through the corridors. Good night, sleep tight. It's a good book.
Hi, I'm Mozz in Year 10, and today I'll be reading to you How to Catch a Star. Once there was a boy, and the boy loved stars really much. Every night, the boy watched stars from his window and wished he had one of his really own. He dreamed how this star might be his friend. They would play hide and go seek and take long walks together. The boy decided that he would try to catch a star. He thought that getting up early in the morning would be best, because the star would likely be tired from being up in the sky all night. So the next day, he set out at sunrise, but he could not see a star anywhere. He sat down and waited for one to appear. He waited, and ate lunch, and waited, and after dinner, he waited some more. Finally, just before the sun was about to go away, he saw a star. The boy tried to jump up and grab it, but he could not jump high enough. So really carefully, he climbed to the top of the tallest tree he could find, but the star was still way out of reach. He thought he might lasso the star with a life belt from his father's boat, but it was too heavy for him to carry. He thought he could fly up in his spaceship and just grab the star, but his spaceship has run out of petrol last Tuesday when he flew to the moon. Perhaps he could get the seagulls to help him fly up into the sky to reach his star. But the only seagull he could find didn't want to help at all. The boy thought that he would never catch a star. Just then, he noticed something floating in the water. It was the prettiest star he has ever seen. Just a baby star. It must have fallen from the sky. He tried to fish the star out with his hand, but he could not reach it. Then he had an idea. The star might wash up on shore. He ran back along the jetty to the beach, then waited and walked. then watched and waited. And sure enough, the star washed up on the bright golden sand. The boy had caught a star of his really own.
It's a good book.
Hello, my name is Joey from Year 7, and I'm here to read Salmon, Dave Dig a Hole. On Monday, Sam and Dave dug a hole. When should we stop digging? Asked Sam. We are on a mission, said Dave. We won't stop digging until we find something spectacular. The hole got so deep that their heads were underground, but they still had not found anything spectacular. We need to keep digging, said Dave. So they kept digging. They took a break. Dave drank chocolate milk out of a flask. Sam ate animal biscuits he had wrapped in their grandfather's kerchief. Maybe, said Dave. The problem is that we are digging straight down. Yes, said Sam. That could be the problem. I think we should dig in another direction, said Dave. Yes, said Sam. That is a good idea. I have a new idea, said Dave. Let's split up. Really? Said Sam. Just for a little while, said Dave. It will improve our chances. So Dave went one way and Sam went another. But they did not find anything spectacular. Maybe we should go back to digging straight down, said Dave. Yes, Sam, that is a good idea. Sam and Dave ran out of chocolate milk, but they kept digging. They shared their last animal biscuit, but they kept digging. After a while, Sam sat down. Dave, he said, I'm tired. I cannot dig anymore. I'm tired too, said Dave. We should have a rest. Sam and Dave fell asleep. Then Sam and Dave were falling. Sam and Dave fell down, 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 until they landed in soft earth. Well, said Sam. Well, said Dave. That was pretty spectacular. And they went inside for chocolate milk and animal biscuits. The end.